Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mind Your Mental. Just a reminder that this podcast is not meant to be a substitute for a relationship with a licensed mental health professional. I know they are hard to find, and I get that. I have a bunch of resources on my website if you need them, but I am not your clinician. I am a psychologist, but I am not your psychologist. So if you need any specific help, please look for the help of a licensed mental health professional. Learn all you can learn from the podcast. Enjoy the episode. Welcome, everyone, to the podcast. My name is Dr. Raquel Martin. I am a licensed clinical psychologist, professor, and scientist, and podcast host, and I am your host for today. That may sound groggier than normal. I had to wake up incredibly early to record this episode. Depending on when this is airing, maybe we are out of the weeds on this, but I have been home with my children. We're going on 3 weeks now. They were sick for a week. We had a snow week, and we are still on a snow week for 5 inches of snow. 5 inches of snow. And let me tell you something. This is when I feel so old because I legit have said so many times to my husband back in my day. I mean, I can't even remember. I remember one time being snowed, and all the other times, if it snowed during a school week, which a lot of times it didn't, that was also the scam, they would show pictures, they would show videos on the news of the plows ready and rearing to go. And they would be like, you still got school tomorrow, kids. Like legit. I remember having to pack my boots, stuff my pants into my boots, wear extra socks, stuff extra pants and or socks and or regular shoes into my book bag when walking to school because we still had school. And half the time still having to walk because my mom still had to be at work at the normal time. And I'm gonna get into the episode. But first of all, it's incredible. So I am incredibly privileged because I'm in my warm house. Complaining about not being able to get to work, get away from these kids. But the thing that always stresses me out about stuff like this when schools close and aftercare closes and the roads aren't viable and stuff like that is one, I trained in trauma. Like that's where I helped patients get through emotional, physical, sexual trauma, right? And school is often their safe space. I've also dealt with children who have had significant amounts of neglect and things like that. So when they can't get to school, I always worry about the fact that school was for some of my patients before they were able to come to care and we were able to get them some services. One of the few places where they got fed. The people who get to stay home are people who are privileged like me, like who have a laptop to be able to do work. But there are so many people who are still having to get into work, or they're going to lose their jobs, or they're not going to have any money, and the roads aren't accessible. So when it comes to the snow thing and things being closed, it also always worries me because I already know that there are so many people who risk their life to make it into work so that they can have another day of being able to pay their bills. And this is another reason why I say this whole aspect of when you think about accessibility in terms of people not being able to make it into work, or you really need to think about policy and government initiatives, because the people who are paying for the investment in plows, the government who are paying for investment in plows, especially in Nashville, Tennessee, they're not worried about this. They're not worried about this. They're going to stay in their nice homes, stay nice and toasty warm. They can log in online. They're not worried about the people who can't do that, who are working the hourly jobs and stuff like that. Hey, everyone, just a reminder that Mind Your Mental is not just a podcast. It is also a amazing community, if I do say so myself. It's phenomenal. I mean, you get more access to me. What more could you want in this life? So if you want to join the community, if you're not already on the community, go to my social media. My social media is the same, Raquel Martin, PhD, and DM me the word community so you can get details on joining this amazing flipping community. You get more access to me, y'all. I'm a delight. All right. Hope to see you there. And that always stresses me out. But into the episode. Today, I wanted to talk about I am so easily amused. Today, we're going to talk about self-care. I was going to name this Self-Care Isn't Sexy, and I might still name this Self-Care Isn't Sexy because I did this post on social media about self-care isn't sexy, it's not easy, and half the time it's not fun, but it's necessary. It's necessary. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. I feel like self-care is the buzzword of the century. I also feel as though self-care has gotten to this space where people feel as though it's indulgent and they've really complicated it. So like self-care is really just the conscious act of caring for yourself, taking proactive steps to maintain and improve your health and well-being. It doesn't have to be indulgent. For some people, it is more on the indulgent side, and that's amazing for them. But it's physical self-care, it's mental, it's emotional, it's financial. It's trying to actively do things that are beneficial for your health and your happiness and your well-being. And that isn't limited to mental health. You know, people will say self-care like it's solely a mental health thing, but no, it's a well-being thing overall. And at the end of the day, it's about being kind to yourself and recognizing when you and your body needs rest and rejuvenation. And you know, a lot of times when I am working with my patients on their self-care regimens and we're talking about like either initiating them or revising them, there's this thought process that they're being selfish. And let me say something. There is a difference between self-care and being selfish, but I will tell you something. Like, who prioritizing yourself? Who else are you gonna prioritize? Please, 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 please. Tell me who else's body you gonna be in and have been in for your entire life. When people, and typically people you have relationships with, they're like, oh well, that's selfish. It's typically, I find that it's typically because you're just like, hey, I know you're used to taking advantage of me and me not prioritizing myself all the time, and you have benefited significantly from that. But I'm actually gonna start caring for myself now. um, I'm sorry if that's inconveniencing you. And the person who's over here complaining and talking about you're being selfish is probably like, I mean, they never gonna say this, but yes, you're right. It does inconvenience me. Thank you for apologizing for inconveniencing me because it does inconvenience me for you to care for yourself. I need to be able to take advantage of you. How dare you? How freaking dare you? Because you know what's going to happen when you have that mental breakdown, when you have that panic attack, when you are hospitalized because of fatigue, when you are sick. You know what's going to happen? Why didn't you say something? Why didn't you just say no? Why didn't you just say no? Why didn't you just say you didn't want to do that? What you mean you said it 27 times? Why didn't you say it 28? How dare you? You know? So to start off, when you think about the difference between self-care and selfishness, the intention and the purpose behind self-care is to replenish yourself and to take care of your overall well-being. Versus when it's selfishness, there's going to be a complete and total disregard. You're going to put your own needs and desires above someone else's to the point where it harms their well-being. The intention of selfishness is personal gain or benefit without considering the impact that it will have on others. So number one, difference between self-care and selfishness: taking care of your own self, replenishing your needs versus complete and total disregard for someone else. I advise you to be mindful of what others see as harm towards them or disregard towards them, and truly take the time to analyze whether or not you actually are harming them or disregarding them, because a lot of people who are used to taking advantage of you, who benefit from taking advantage of you, who benefit from your lack of self-care, boundaries and accountability are going to seem like violence for them. Let me say it again. For people who are used to taking advantage of you, for people who are used to benefiting from your lack of self-care, boundaries and accountability are going to seem like a violence to them. They're going to feel like you punched them in the face twice. They're going to be like, oh my God, what is that? What was that? What was that? You behaving in an appropriate manner? What the freak? When did you get that? Where they sell that at? Target? Oh my gosh. So that's number one difference. Another difference between self-care and selfishness: the impact of self-care is going to be positives. When you take care of yourself, you're better equipped to engage with others. You're better equipped to spend time with the world and spend time with yourself. It's going to, if anything, it contributes to healthy relationships, because I can't be the person I need to be if I'm exhausted and I'm doing things that I don't want to do. So as a result, I'm probably going to have low frustration tolerance and be difficult and all of that. But selfishness, that's going to lead to strained relationships. That's going to lead to a lack of consideration for the needs of others. That's going to contribute to conflict. And please, once again, think about whether the conflict is you are disregarding others, you are being rude and being awful and cussing people out. Is that the disregard? Is that the negative impact of your supposed self-care? Or is the negative impact of your self-care people are used to taking advantage of you and now they can't take advantage of you and they are pissed off about it? Let me tell you something, because despite what your, social media mental health advocate gurus that got 5 million followers tell you, self-care is not easy. It's not one size fits all. It's not going to happen in a 60-second video. Okay? It's not. I one time got asked in a recent presentation, well, how long is it going to take to rebuild, build these new habits? And I was like, how old are you? They said 35. I said, well, let's take away 5 years in terms of like building habits. So let's just say you had 30 years to build these poor habits. I think you can give yourself 6 months to a year to build new ones and even start with the initiation of building new ones. Yeah, that's sucks, right? It's a little difficult. But we're the result of our experiences. We're the result of the people around us. We're the result of our internal dialogue, and the aspect of self-care and having difficulty with self-care and trying to even feel as though you're caring for yourself and not being selfish and not feeling as though you need to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. That didn't happen overnight. That happened with consistent messaging. That happened with seeing people on media that look like you always be the strong Black woman or the strong Black man and never talk about their feelings. That happened as a result of you asking for help and possibly being invalidated when you asked for help. So you said, I ain't never going to do it again. That happened as a result of you not having anyone to ask for help in the first place. That happened as a result of you asking someone for help and then they threw it back in your face at a later date. The amount of time it's going to take to upend that and realize that help is something that you deserve, support is something that you deserve, sleep and rest is something that you deserve. Yeah, that's not going to happen in just 2 to 4 weeks, because you have to rethink and retool your brain and upend that thinking and figure out if the people around you are even going to be supportive of your self-care. And then that's going to come with, I got to do some cleaning out of the people in my life. When people mention spring cleaning, I'm always like, spring cleaning doesn't just refer to your home. It refers to your relationships as well. So look around. Put that head on a swivel to be like, how many times am I going to ignore the fact that once I prioritize myself, you done lost your mind. You done talk to me like you ain't got no sense. How many times am I going to act like there are certain people that I don't notice with a stank attitude when I say that my physical self-care is going to be, I am not drinking anymore, using substances? How many times am I going to act like I don't notice when I talk about my financial self-care being, I am not paying for this person anymore? Now they talking about I've never given them a thing in their life. How many times am I going to act like it's healthy for me to be around these people? You see what I'm saying? Also, please be aware that when it comes to self-care and selfishness, there's always going to be like a balance aspect of it. Right. So number 3, there's always going to be some aspect of balance between self-care and selfishness. Self-care is always going to recognize the balance between self-interest and the well-being of others. I'm not expecting you to have malicious intent, but self-care is a balance because it acknowledges the importance of caring for yourself and the necessary part of caring for yourself to be able to care for others efficiently. I want to state the difference between self-care and selfish, because I want you to understand the words for the different. And I'm not going to say that there aren't times where selfishness doesn't need to take place. I'm not going to say there aren't times when you need to be like, I understand you need me at this moment. And I'm telling you, and this is even still self-care, I'm telling you, I can't be there. I can't be there. It's too much for me to be there. I was not even being honest with myself when I told you I could be there. I can't do it. Right? The same way I talk about rules versus boundaries. Rules attempt to guide someone else's behavior and boundaries guide your own. I'm never going to say that there's never a place for rules in your relationship. Like, rule in my relationship is do not raise your voice at me. Do not raise your voice at me. And I'm pretty sure my husband has that same rule too. Do not raise your voice at me. That's not how we talk to each other, right? Let's get into different kinds of self-care so you can grasp that. And then we're going to talk about ways for knowing that you need self-care. Now, a lot of people will think that self-care only refers to like one kind. They only talk about like mental self-care, like emotional self-care. And that's processing and expressing your emotions in a healthy way. It can be therapy. It doesn't always have to be therapy. It could be individual therapy. It could be group therapy. I find that when there are many times when individual therapy is too expensive and you can't find an individual therapist, I also feel as though group therapy can be incredibly helpful because you don't have to heal in isolation. You're able to be surrounded by people that are also dealing with the same thing. And I think that can be incredibly helpful because one of the most stressful aspects of dealing with your mental health and what it is the feeling of isolation. The feeling like you're the only person going through this. And to an extent, you are the only person going through it because you're the only person who is in your body dealing with that issue. However, being able to hear other people share the way that they dealt with that issue can also be helpful, or even build relationships, understanding that healing doesn't have to be in isolation, because therapy also models appropriate relationships. It can provide you with some mindset of understanding that like, oh, that wasn't appropriate the way that person spoke to me. Right? It can normalize experiences. Let me tell you a brief story. I had a patient who was sharing, and they were doing this big lead up. I thought this person was about to tell me where they hid a body. I was just like, oh my gosh. They're like, I have to say something awful. I have to say something terrible. I have to say something terrible. Please, please don't fire me as a client. And I'm like, what is happening? They about to, oh my goodness. And you never know. And of course, it's not on my face, but in my head, I'm internally like, okay, I hope everything's okay. I hope this person is safe. I hope they're all right. And they said, sometimes I find my child to be annoying. Oh my gosh, I'm terrible. Covered her mouth and everything. And I said, that's because children can be annoying. What were you, is that what you were trying to? I mean, the way that her body was just like, oh my gosh, are you serious? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I felt like such a terrible, terrible mom. Oh my gosh. I said, you felt like a terrible mom because you felt that your children were annoying? Did you throw your child in a closet when they annoyed you? She was like, oh my God, no. And I was just like, okay. Children can be irritating. People can be irritating. I irritate myself sometimes. Why? Girl, why do you think so much? Why do you think so much? Why do you talk so fast? Why do you come a mile a minute? What is it? Why do you just talk a mile a minute? That's exhausting. Being in my head is tiresome. Let me tell you something. I am an anomaly wrapped in an enigma, placed in a Rubik's Cube, punctuated with a question mark. Honey, it's exhausting. Pray for my husband, but pray for me. I'm the one that gotta live it. Like, the way that my patient was able to release, like I saw her body deflate, like, and just not feel like a terrible person, and having the normalizing experience of being like, yes, children can be irritating. I said, let's check in and see some ways that we can get you to a point where you know that you've been touched out, or you can't respond in an appropriate way, or give your child the parent that they deserve, because they deserve a well-rested, non-irritated parent. Let's figure out your signs when that's coming up so I can help you work on that, right? Because at the end of the day, children, the goal is to co-regulate your children. You have to regulate yourself. Children can't regulate themselves. You have to regulate yourself, and you co-regulate your child. So if you are feeling irritable or angry or sad or upset, you are not in a regulated manner and in a regulated mindset, and you can't co-regulate your child. So you're more likely to snap on your child. And that's why I always say, like, you can't heal what you do not reveal. You not acknowledging that stress, you not acknowledging the sadness or the trauma or the flashbacks or the feeling crappy after spending time with that person, you not acknowledging it is doing more harm than good, because what is it? Squeaky wheel gets the oil. Why are you going to fix something that you're not admitting that is a problem? So that's why I say, like, the emotional self-care can also be the aspect of individual therapy, family therapy, coming up with certain activities that help you relax, or even stress management techniques, or journaling, right? Because it's going to help you process your emotions in a healthy way. But it's also going to start with self-monitoring, because you can't understand that you are knocked off your baseline if you don't know what your baseline is. If your baseline is typically having like, I don't know, 1 or 2 negative thoughts a day, because everyone has some aspect of negative thoughts a day, and now you're at 10 and you haven't noticed the uptick, you haven't noticed that something has gone terribly wrong, right? Because it's a deviation from your norm. I'm not going to say your norm should be to have 0 negative thoughts a day, because that's not the case. But I'm also not going to say that if your typical is 10, I would love to get you down to maybe a smooth 2. I'm not going to lie. But you also need to know what your norm is to know when you have deviated from that norm. All right. And then also physical self-care. Exercise that improve your health. Exercise, nutrition. And I'm not going to say like, oh my God, make sure you only eat fruits and vegetables your whole life. No, you should be eating fruits and vegetables every single day. You know, food is fuel. And a lot of times we're expecting our car to go 20 miles an hour on a quarter tank of gas, right? You be that person being like, I know my car. You know your car. That's why we on the side of the road. That's why you know your car. That's what y'all doing with your body. I know my body. I can go, 4 hours of sleep for 2 months. Have I been sick for 6 weeks of those 2 months? Yes, but that's just, there's something going around. Yeah, exhaustion. Come on now. Come on. Stress actually suppresses your immune system's ability to function. You ever feel like, oh my gosh, every time it's always something because now I'm sick. Yeah, you always sick because it's always something. Think of it like, your body has like, let's think of like army men and stuff like that. And when your body is fully functioning, you got like 1,000 army men ready to knock those illnesses in the face, kick them in the face, smack them in the head. But when you're not sleeping right, that takes away like 20 army men. When you don't have proper nutrition, that takes away 15. When you constantly go into a job that you have to mask and can't be yourself at, so it's taking more energy to function, that takes away like 30 of those army men. My degree is not in math, so I don't know what number we're at now, but it's not a lot. You started at 100. One that I will say more people need to focus on a lot, financial self-care. Yeah. So financial self-care helps you ensure financial stability. Ain't nothing worse than it's like the 5th of the month. You trying to get to the 30th of the month and you're over here regretting every single burrito or meal that you had. It's like, man, that burrito wasn't even good. I did not need to get guac on that. You over here thinking about, is there anything I can return? Are there stuff that I can return? That's a sign that your financial stability is not going well. Big aspects of financial self-care, budgeting. And I'm telling you, self-care is not sexy, but it's necessary, okay? If you want to feel sexy when you do your self-care, honey, listen, put on some lingerie when you over here going through your Bank of America app, figuring out what you're not going to purchase anymore. If that helps you, all right? Twerk in the mirror while you over here shutting down those subscriptions that you're not using, okay? Make it all clap while you tell that person that you're not going out to dinner tonight. Okay? Do what you gotta do. For example, I used to spend way too much money in Target. Still do. But when it was getting out of control, I would take cash out before I went to Target. And I would put my wallet in my glove box. This is back in the day when the glove box is locked. And I didn't have Apple, that Apple Pay thing on my phone. So if you came here to get a shirt, get the shirt. You ain't getting nothing else. Okay. It would also help me get a good deal because I would just be like, let me see if I get this other shirt though and add something in there. But you have to be aware of like what you can and cannot do. There are certain things I was just like, I don't have the capacity to come in here with my debit card and then not act like I had a full cart when all I came here for was some lip bar lip gloss. I ain't got it in me. You got to self-monitor. You got to know your limits. All right. Another one. Social self-care. When social self-care is detrimental, that's typically when we're having issues in the first place. You're focusing on maintaining, you could be initiating new relationships, maintaining relationships, and also nurturing those relationships. Because when it comes to maintaining relationships, sometimes I'll hear people talking about marriage and the first thing they say is marriage is work. And I'm just like, dang, man, can we talk about love as well? Love is not the only thing that keeps marriage going. So I totally get why people go there. But some people would be like, man, are y'all even happy being married? I'm not talking about a personal relationship. I'm just talking about people who always talk about marriage. I always want to state all relationships take work. Your relationship with yourself takes work. That's why we're talking about self-care, your relationship with friends and family. And nurturing and maintaining those healthy relationships, it involves spending time with friends and family, fostering those connections. And some part of social self-care will be acknowledging that you're not in a space to be able to maintain those relationships right now, and sharing that and having a conversation about that and seeing what happens next. I was just talking to a friend the other day who was going through huge transitions in their life, getting married, having a child, being honest about the fact of like saying just simple as like, hey, sometimes there are phases in your life where it is hard to care for anyone outside of your home. It's going to be hard to care for anyone outside of your new child and your husband. And that is okay. That is okay. Share that. Share that. People who are able to support you, they can support you during that time. And then also their expectations are different. Because you do have people who want to be invited even though they're not going to show up. But you also have people who don't want to be invited because they don't want to know how to say no. And they feel like they may feel bad that consistently inviting them to stuff means that they feel like they're letting you down. So social self-care is maintaining and nurturing healthy relationships and understanding that different relationships require different things. Because I will tell you, the things that contribute to people staying in awful situations, the two things that I have found as a licensed clinical psychologist, as a professor, as a scientist, as a person, the top two things that keep people in terrible scenarios that contribute to the detriment of their social self-care: nostalgia and loneliness. Nostalgia and loneliness. And being alone is not loneliness. So figure out if those to practice this, figure out if you need to connect with people differently. Some people are long distance, so you can have phone calls. Maybe you set up phone calls. Some people are in person. You got people that you want to go to the club with. You got people that you want to create a book club with. They could be in the same person, but they don't have to be. And that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with that person. That just means that they fulfill different roles in your life. And also I would say one of the self-cares that I think should be talked about more that can help you is environmental self-care, like taking care of your personal space, your home, your office, creating like a calming and supportive environment, making that space the space that you walk into, you don't feel incredibly stressed out. As a Black woman I have more Black men around me than women. Even the dog is he Black. I hope he know it. He technically does have Black and white spots, but he know he Black. He not allowed in his kitchen. Okay. He not allowed in places where we eat. You hear me? Don't step on this furniture. When he be tripping, I legit be like, Maddox, you must have lost your Black mind. I know. That is not half a paw near this kitchen. Because you notice we don't do that. You know that, right? And I got him as a puppy and tried to look me in my mouth. I was like, oh. I'm sorry. We're Black. All right? People who do that, a dog's mouth is cleaner than a human's. Stop it. Dogs use their tongue as toilet paper. All right. So if you were comfortable with that, more power to you. But absolutely not. But when I'm talking about environmental self-care, I make sure that my home is, of course, a safe space for everyone who comes into my house, but especially like my two boys and my husband. I in no way want to create an environment. There's this mindset with Black people, and I think we're getting away from it. Like, the world is tough, so I'm going to be tougher. I always say the world is tough, so I'm going to be a safe space to land, because I will never treat the people in my life, especially the Black boys and men and Black women in my life, the way the world treats us, because we deserve better and have always deserved better. Which takes energy at times, because sometimes I do want to be like, yeah, I know you had a rough day at work, but you pissed me off at noon. I'm supposed to just let that go? Because you had a rough day? And the answer is no, you ain't let it go, but you ain't got to talk about it as soon as you walk in the crib. You know what I'm saying? Like, you ain't got to talk about it as soon as they walk in the crib. And also, even like with artwork and making sure like that looks like my babies. I make sure there's Black artwork of Black boys and men all around the house, so they feel like this is an affirming space. If anything, we need some more women up in here, yo. Golly. Masculine energy is ripe around here. But when we talk about environmental self-care, organizing and taking care of your personal spaces, and I can understand that can be difficult, because when you are having a difficult time, your self-care is the first thing to go. But coming up with solutions with that, like if you don't want a bunch of dirty dishes around you, get a bin, move them outside of your room, so at least they're not in your room, or use paper plates or utensils. You don't have the energy to cook, get some microwave meals so you can throw them out. You don't feel like you're too tired to shower and because you're burnt out, hit the hot spots. Just be aware of that. And also, I would say, when it comes to self-care, also thinking about professional self-care, having some aspect of balance. Now, once again, I subscribe to the Stacey Adams way. I don't think it's self-care. And I can't remember if it's Stacey Adams or Shonda Rhimes because I read their books at the same time. So think about setting professional boundaries, engage in activities that contribute to career satisfaction. Or I also realize that it's okay to state that my job is my job. And I like my job for being able to provide me with the lifestyle I want. And when I say the lifestyle I want, that don't mean it has to be some ridiculous, luxurious lifestyle. I like my job because it lets me buy food and spend time with my friends. But I don't need to have my job be my end all be all and be my life. I don't. It's great if you are enamored with your career, and that's fantastic. I consider it beneficial that I am enamored with the majority aspects of my career. I love what I do. I think it's what I've been put on this earth to do. But I'm also aware that everyone's not there. They like their job for the check. My job provides the opportunity to do stuff that I love. What I love is not my job, and that's okay too. We talked about the different types of self-care, and I'm gonna go over some brief things to tell you when you need self-care. Okay, like to understand the aspect. If you have low frustration tolerance, every time something happens, you want to flip a table. If you notice an increase in your substance use, and I'm not saying not using any substances because I don't know your specific use of substances, but if you realize that, it used to be having one glass of wine and now you're having a bottle a day. You have a change in your activity level. You don't like moving as much. You have a change in your appetite because when you're upset or stressed out, of course, you're not going to crave a salad. That's just the way the body works. If you're having physical symptoms, body tension, you're going to the doctor and they can't explain what's going on, it's likely stress. Libido changes. And I will tell you something. So many people forget to look at libido, like when it comes to stress. And that's actually one of the first things I ask people. And like, if you can't talk about sex in therapy, you with the wrong clinician. I'm not here to make you feel uncomfortable. We can talk about trauma. We can talk about sex. You no longer have an interest. You no longer feel attractive. Your sex drive has gone down, even though you don't want it to go down. That's a sign that something is off. It'd also be a sign that you need your medications to be changed. Unfortunately, that's a result of a lot of mental health medications, psychiatric medications, as well as like having reduced performance. Talking about sex and then talking about reduced performance. That I didn't plan that, but reduced performance meaning it used to take you 10 minutes to do something and now it takes you 55. And when you think about this, how do you deal with it when it comes to having these issues? First of all, I want you to realize that when it comes to having these difficulties and having burnout, no amount of PTO is going to make up for being burnt out. You're talking about your weekends are less rejuvenative. Oh my gosh, all I need is a 3-day weekend. No, you don't. The solution to burnout is not a 3-day weekend. It's not a vacation because first of all, no amount of vacation is going to help make you feel better for going back to a job that you loathe. But it's evolution. You're going to have to upend your entire system because if you're burnt out and then you go on a 3-day weekend and then you come back to that burnt out scenario, all you did was place yourself back into that awful scenario. You didn't change the scenario. You burnt out and you took a 4-day weekend. That's what's up. One of those days needs to be to decide what you're going to change in your scenario. What are you going to change in your scenario? Do you need to change your work environment? Do you need to change how you're eating or how much you're working out? Do you need to have those conversations with that person about the relationship that's difficult so you don't have to consistently go there? Do you have to be honest about the fact that you hate your job because you have to mask and have to act and have to work day by day to not feel the need to mask at work? Do you need to start working out? Do you need to go to therapy? Do you need to find a new clinician because the person you're working on in therapy, y'all have been going through goals and you haven't achieved those goals and they haven't been receptive to that? The only solution to burnout is the evolution of the way that you are living. It's not a vacation. You have to change who you are or what you're doing. Think about it this way. I'm going to give you an example. Say you have an amazing, you got this new chair. This chair is amazing, right? It gets dirty because the environment in the house is dirty. You got the chair in the living room, and the windows are broken. There's mud everywhere. I don't even know what that is on that carpet, all of that. So you take your chair out to be clean. You get the upholstery cleaned. You clean that chair, the front, the back, the side, that joint is shining. You just like, oh my God, I thought I got a new chair. And what do? You bring it back to that living room. And you never clean that living room. Heck, you never even understood what contributed to the living room getting so messy in the first place. So the chair is going to get dirty again. What was the point? There wasn't one. You see what I'm saying? You can't only focus on yourself. You have to focus on the environmental things. You got to, if we doing this living room scenario, what the heck, where did that stain come from? Do I have to have a conversation about don't eat in my good living room? Why is the window broken? The window's broken. Now every time it rains, the house has this smell because there's mildew. We got to fix the window. Do not do all the work to just solely work on yourself and thinking that your environment doesn't have to be addressed too. All right, y'all. I hope y'all have a phenomenal day. Always remember, 2 steps forward and 1 step back is still 1 step forward. That is just math. Be kind to yourself, okay? Because who else is going to do it? And check the credentials of your local mental health social media guru.